look at yourself. We hear these cliches like you have to be happy and look at the man in the mirror, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes we see that and we look at that and we hear that and I can look at myself and I can feel good about myself, right? But when you really take a look at yourself, and I got to a point to where it's like I couldn't look at myself. Like I just did not like who I was. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like, this is not me. This is not at the core who I am or what I believe. And then when that is exposed to yourself, because you can't play nobody else, that's when that reflection happens.
yeah.
Right? Like, okay, well, who is it that you want to be? Who are you trying to be? Who is it that you say that you are?
Who are
Right?
you to
Who
begin with?
are you? Right? Yeah, who are you? Like that, who are you? And when you really take that serious and say, like, who are you? Now you can kind of start seeing yourself in a little bit more clarity, right?
Yeah,
And then once you get there, being able to forgive yourself and allow yourself to say, like, I've made some mistakes and I'm not going to let that define me. And this is a part of who I was, but this is not who I'm striving to be. And sometimes you come across people that, you have your cynics that are like, people don't change unless something makes them change, right? And then just having to maybe again, just continue to do the work. Like this is who I am, and I get it and I understand, right? Because everybody's experience is completely different. But if you are once you are able to really truly get to a place to where the mistakes that you made, right, you can move forward from that. You can forgive yourself from a small mistake to a big mistake and trust that you're going to do it differently the next time you face this challenge, right? Because life is going to continue to life. It's not going to stop. And when you face this challenge again and you can overcome that, like we talked about with military training, repetition, the more you repetition and you have these things and you say, okay, I face this challenge, it's not as difficult the next time that I face this. And I know exactly who to do this or how to get through this, or I know who to call now to be able to help me out through these things. And so I believe that it really takes a collective. You said it, like that's where that utopia comes from, being able to have these people surrounded by these people in your lives to say, like, hey, I'm going through some challenge right now. Right. To have the vulnerability to be able to say that and to be able to call on somebody, a close friend or
I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I guess I'll get right into it. It's a conversation. That I wanted to ask you. The first thing was that, like, what's worth defending in America?
everything. Yeah, everything in America is worth defending, right? I think that is one of the great things about being in America, right? And all of those things that we have, whatever it is that you believe, whatever you choose to support, you have to be able to kind of stand on it. And so I think everything is worth defending, right? So with anything that we defend in America, whoever we're defending it to, I think it's who's willing to listen. That's the more important part. Being able to listen and get the other side and get the other perspective of whatever it is that's being defended, or being stated. I think everything in America, saying no matter what it is that you believe or anything like that is worth defending, but it's also worth being able to being listened to make our own decisions from that as well.
What do you mean? Listen, who would have to listen to you?
So when you say what in America is worth defending, right? Who are we having that conversation with? Is that something that we're having that conversation internally, right? Whether it's ourselves and we're saying like, okay, I believe firmly in this, or I think about these things, and this is something that is important to me. So this is something that I want to defend. If it's either under attack or something that we want to bring awareness to, or we want some things brought to the table, it first starts with ourselves, right? So we have to start there, and then so either then if we're speaking to individuals, right, whether that be a group of people that want to defend those things with us or believe some of those same things with us or think about some of those same things, right? And there's strength in numbers, right? But then now if we come into people that, it may not be so important to, it may not be so important to myself as it is to somebody else. And so if I'm talking to an individual and that I believe in something that's worth defending, I'm hopeful that as Americans, we are somebody that are able to listen because at the end of the day, we hopefully to value people, right? And so I think that people's conversations and being able to hear people and what they have to say, even if we don't find agreement on everything, we're not going to agree on everything, but if we can find a middle ground or find something to be able to be worth listening, and essentially that's a success because you have defended what you believe where you given the opportunity to hear somebody's side. So I think that everything is worth defending for sure.
My God, it's so profound. How did you get this kind of sensibility about American life?
Just being here, right? Being
Really?
born
Was
in
it was
America.
it
Yeah.
was it really um sort of instilled in you as a child? How did you
Yeah.
pick up all this sensibility?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that, one being how we're raised, right? I come from a relatively small family, but my mother has a big family, right? So being able to, growing up, the way I was raised and the beliefs that were instilled in me, the values that were instilled in me, and being able to see people as people and seeing the good in people. I have to want to hope that, we have some of the same goals, right? We just maybe have different ways of getting there. But ultimately, everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to be healthy. Everybody wants to feel something, right? So my mom used to tell me there's more than one way to get there, right? So that eliminates, that one lane of thinking, right? And so like I might think a certain type of way, but you may have a better way of doing something. And so to take that into consideration, you're like, you know what, we're getting there together. There's other ways that we can do it. So having that mentality and having that instilled and understanding that and recognizing people's differences, that's why we're individuals, right? We are all individuals. When you see somebody, like, that is an individual. So they're going to have an individual way of thinking that's different than my thinking. And that's what makes everything so beautiful, right? Is because if I'm able to have a conversation with you, just like we're doing now, to come together on some things and kind of like, you know what, and take some perspective and be able to take that. Conversations don't necessarily need answers right away, right? But if you can have that conversation with somebody and you're like, okay, man, I never thought about something like that, right? Or let me look at this a little bit further, whatever it is, maybe, you know what, you may have always liked Mercedes. I may have always liked BMWs, right? And you tell me Mercedes is the greatest car in the world. Like, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? BMWs are pretty good, but it's like we can have a conversation about it. And so I think that if people attack those things with that and have that open mindedness, I think that helps with a lot of things. So yeah, a lot of it was with how I was raised. I was raised in the church, um, you know, and so
What happens in the
being,
church? Can you walk me through like what specifically in church shapes your character?
yeah, absolutely, right. So just being a Christian, right, just walking at the biblical principles, right. You have the golden rules, right. Treat others how you want to be treated. I think that at the end of the day, that is if we live that way, right, and we live that way, we understand that everybody is an individual, and everybody may not have the same thinking that we do. It's going to allow you to accept people for their mistakes and accept people's faults and accept people's differences, but to be able to see the human in them, no matter where we come from, right. So having those biblical principles and that foundation and being able to recognize that definitely shapes who I am today and how I treat people, and hope that, other people could treat people the same way. Now, I know that sometimes we're not perfect, right? It takes a lot in life's experiences, whether it be, in the church, and sometimes people may get away from that or stay in that or may not believe whatsoever. But we also understand that everybody collectively lives life together, right? And so life's experiences may shape some people, right? And hopefully they come across some individuals that are just, that we can have conversations just like what we're doing today. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life.
Do you think this perspective is shared more broadly among Americans? Let me qualify this really
Yeah.
quick. To me, the way I hear it as an immigrant to America, this is kind of like you're the ideal citizen of a country, somebody who deeply cares
Hmm.
about the values and actually lives it. A couple of things here. So it sounds to me this is over and over. I'm married to a Christian person, but she's not religious. She doesn't go to church and things like that. But I
Sure.
do
Mhm.
realize that church was a very integral part of your social life, your cultural life, and also intellectual life to a large degree. And to me, it seems very interesting that when you go to church on Sunday and things along those lines, you're actually taking the sermons very seriously. You're actually deeply sort of meditating upon it. Even as a child, when you're going there, you're watching perhaps your parents take that seriously, and you sort of imbibe those qualities in yourself. I guess part of it is that I'm wondering, do most people you think who come to church take those? I know there's a spectrum of this, but it
Sure.
seems to
Sure.
me I've met enough people who even if they're not religious, it seems like church is one source where they get some of these great ideas, and it's often kind of lost in the kind of the religious people, that stereotype and so on. But it's very much like part of the moral and social fabric of America, which is deeply. I love that kind of framing because I grew up in India as a Hindu guy. I'm an atheist now,
Okay.
but as a Hindu guy, you went to temple in a very kind of transactional relationship. Of course, there are holy books. You read holy books for morals and values and so on. But temple was just for prayer, was just for like you go, ask for forgiveness or whatever, fill in the blank. But it was never there was never somebody who stood there and kind of actively guided you through your life. And it seems to me in
Sure.
America that is very much a part of your life.
Hmm. No, I would agree, right? Um, whatever. I'm not 100% versed in the Hindu faith, so I forgive my ignorance there. But for in the States, for what Christianity and all of that stuff looks like, it's very much a part of it, right? You're going to church, you're going to mass, you're going to Sunday service, right? I grew up in church where I was going multiple times a week,
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, it wasn't just a Sunday thing, for us. And so we are able to deep dive into the Bible and get good understanding of the word. So those values are something, and again, as you get older, it's one of those ones where Christianity in itself is an individual walk, right? So my mom could take me to church, but once I become of age, that's an individual thing that I have to make that determination whether or not I want to continue in that. And if that's something that I want to continue to pursue. Right. And so even for you saying that, growing up how you went and, you may have your challenges and how you lead now, but some of those things probably still are embedded in you and maybe shape some of your framework of who you are now. You may not agree with completely of everything, but you have a baseline that was there for you. Right. And then now you've been able to go on your journey where, you've been able to explore some things. And and as you said, your wife has been able to accept those things for you. I mean, you accept those things about her as well. So
Yeah.
having that baseline understanding, I think is what shapes and to answer your question, shapes us. And so as far as individuals, it's something that I think individuals have these conversations with these same feelings. It's crazy because I want to think that they do, right? I'm a very optimistic person. And I think that
Mm.
a lot of people have these conversations that you and I are having, in their homes and with their friends and with people that people that they trust. So yeah, I firmly believe that. I firmly believe people are having conversations all the time, you know, not necessarily always just about faith, but they're having conversations that they are challenging one another, right? And they are looking for information, right? Because I don't think that people get to a point to where they ultimately feel like a status quo, right? If you were doing something and you were just, going through the motions, that would probably drive you
I
crazy.
I mean that's how I grew up in India. And I
Hmm.
mean
Okay.
you kind of like I mean I hate to generalize, but nonetheless this was middle class life for me growing up until I was
Okay.
22, which is um you sort of like you basically trampled through life. I don't know, lack of a better word. You just
Okay.
kind of like
Yeah.
you reacted to everything that came in
Yeah.
front of you,
Yeah.
and there was very little in terms of a moral framework, very little in terms of a cultural framework. Yeah, you had dogma, a lot of dogma. You had a lot of
Right.
like
Okay.
beliefs and
Yeah.
doctrines and so on.
Sure.
And there was fear surrounding that. There was always a carrot and stick model where it's like, hey, you have to do these things in praise of God, and then you will be bestowed upon these things. Yes, that's great. And kindness and all of these virtues were also taught along with that. But what I see often, in American life, at least in the Midwest, I've spent 25 years here, and it's like,
Okay.
I love it. How come you guys never rebelled against it? You went to church and you said, you know what, I can figure out something else. But it seems like when I say you guys, I mean like Americans who take
American.
this
Sure.
very, yeah, who take things very seriously. I'm so in awe of that, and it's a wonderful idea that this framework is. You have convictions about these things, right? Like
Sure.
it sounds like this is unshakable belief, and I'm very much with you on all of these things. I've come through the hard way and kind of learned these
Yeah.
things that you've learned, and you're like, this is a matter of fact of American life, or
Hmm.
or your
Hmm.
life at least, and it's very inspiring to me. And you poured that into your, I'm guessing your military life, your National Guard, and all of that, which I love to get into as well. But anyway, I'm yeah, it's worth mentioning. You've served abroad. You've served in Afghanistan. You've served in Iraq. Are there things where you notice in those societies where you feel like we are so damn lucky out here?
Oh,
Not just the
yeah.
infrastructure, not
Sure.
infrastructure, not the all the other stereotypes, but deeply in terms of people and the kernel of thought and the culture and so on. Like when you look at that sort of thing, like what do you think?
Man, that's and just a correction. I've not been to Afghanistan, just Iraq.
I'm
I've been
sorry.
to Iraq. Yep. Yep. No worries.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we got that. I don't want to take away from anybody that has,
Yeah.
have been in
Served.
those
Yeah.
capacities for sure. But I have been to Iraq and I have been to other places. And I
Hmm.
mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head with that. And so when you ask the question, what in America is worth fighting for, having been other places, that lets you know right there, like everything is worth fighting for because not everybody has the liberties and the freedoms that we so much times we see individuals sometimes take for granted. Like you say, you got here at what age did you come to America?
22.
22, right? So think about, the life you had reached adulthood, in India. And so when you came to America, I think that, and I don't want to speak for you or anything, but I'm pretty sure that you were excited to be in America and it was,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that growing up in India and once you got to America, it may have caused a lot of questions for you. And you know what I mean? It's like, whatever perceptions you may have had or whatever you thought, you see differently now. So everything is going to be, you're going to question everything, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like you're in a relearning phase. And so take me for an example. When I've grown up in America and I understand everything that we have, you have a level of patriotism that sometimes we can take for granted just because of, we're born here, right? But then, like you say, when you go to areas and you see so many different things, it really makes you like take a look at everything, and make you appreciate the small things, like just the ability to have, I can brush my teeth and have running water, like just run while I'm brushing my teeth. You know what I mean? For somebody overseas, you know what I mean? That may not just be as free, or that's difficult to have for them. You get what I'm saying? Not taking anything for granted for me has always been a part of my life. Growing up, in a single parent household, you have a lot of challenges, and you don't know those at the time until you become an adult and you face some of those things yourself. When you go overseas and, just being able to take that in and appreciate that even in those countries, and respect the culture, right? And understand that this is the way of life for them and they don't know any different. I think you have to give that respect, but then you also have to be grateful for, um, all the opportunities and all of the things that you were afforded, or we as individuals and Americans are afforded. Because it's there's some people that don't have it so good as us, but at the same time, you talk to them, perspective is everything. And you may talk to them, and even though they don't know any different, they don't know what American life is like, and they can be doing very well. So they have a piece that they have a piece about themselves where, we may not have that same mentality of peace. And so that's the beautiful thing about being able to communicate and being able to be open with people, because I can complain about a day, but perspective is everything. And this individual here has less than what I may have, and they're rich in spirit and rich in heart, and rich in peace. And that's something that everybody wants.
Rich in heart and rich in spirit. I don't think that's quite prevalent in my opinion back in India. Rich in heart and
No,
rich in
I know.
spirit.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, right? So those are perspectives, right? Those are perspectives. And so I've never traveled to India, and I would definitely love to be able to have that, to be able to see and experience those things, right? And
Yeah,
so
I mean
yeah,
it's a very personal like as far as like experience goes, Steve. I'll say this much that I can claim this is sort of objective. It's like because I've kind of like paid deep attention to some of these things in America, like very deep attention because this is so alien to me. Some of these ideas are so alien. When I came to America, like people would, and this is in the Midwest again. I know I'm idealizing, but it's just like people took me out of their wing and from the goodness of their heart wanted to mentor me, from the goodness of their heart wanted to help me out, from the goodness of their heart showed me kindness when I was not good at whatever it was, right? And then India, the country of 1.5 billion people, roughly speaking, it's a lot about connections, it's a lot about nepotism, it's a lot about like class, divides in society and so on. It's very obvious when
okay,
even though I grew up in a very middle class household, connection was everything. The euphemism people use is influence. I know I'm making your point that America
sure,
is worth preserving. I know I am, but at the same time, I want to add nuance to the conversation because there's things like this, like the people just sheer good from the goodness of their heart, the richness of their spirit, are doing this just because of that. They're not expecting things in return,
sure.
which is
And
which
yeah,
is
no,
profound to me.
right. And I think that, like you say, right. And so that coming from India and having spent most of your adult life there,
Yeah.
when you come here, I can completely understand, the how interesting, like you say, and how interesting that is to you, because you're like, it's not like that. It's not like that where I'm come from. And it's kind of like you say, you're looking for the nuance and you're looking for something, and it's like there has to be something here that reminds me of home or something like that, right? And I get it. And let's not sit here and say that, that doesn't happen, right? We understand that
Oh
those things
yeah, of
those things
course,
do
of course.
happen, but
Yeah.
you know, and I'm pretty sure in the corners of in, would you say, 1.2 billion people in
One point, almost approaching 1.5 billion.
1.5 billion people. I can imagine, right? So almost
Yeah.
every city there is probably like a huge metropolitan city. So we have to
Yeah.
believe, you know what I mean? Like again, I
Of
think that
course,
just
of
comes,
course, of course,
yeah,
of course.
yeah. But a
Great
lot of what
people.
you've
Yeah,
experienced, yeah, a lot of what you experienced is probably that. So I'm also glad that it's been refreshing for you in your 25 years here, or
absolutely.
25 years here, or 22 years here. That has been refreshing, that you've been able to come across, like you say, some
And
individuals that
learn
have,
these things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So that's
unlearn a lot of things too at the same time.
one,
Learn
yeah,
and
that's right.
unlearn. Yeah.
Is that difficult, right, for you, right? Because coming from a culture, right, and coming into a different place and a different culture, was it, did you come in like being open, or were you kind of like, of course, that's scary. That's a huge move. Were you defensive about some things, and then did it take a lot to get your defenses down, if in case, or no?
Oh God, you're opening up a can of worms here, Steve. But I mean, I'm an outlier in the sense that like TV made its way, like Western American TV made its way to India in the mid to late 90s. So I got indoctrinated with America. I was so fascinated and just kind of, I don't know, this kind of anticipation that I'm going to go to this great country and experience all the cool things, all the beautiful women, and do all these cool
Yeah,
things
yeah,
in
yeah.
cars and rap music and all of these things. So I
Right.
came to America with this sort of rose-colored glasses, and it still is on because I still
Sure.
it stepped out for me totally. And at the same time, as far as reckoning with the cultural differences and so on, I've written about this in my blogs and so on. I really feel there's a sincerity to American life. There's a sincerity. I watched Star Trek a lot when I was growing up in the late 90s, and the way Captain Kirk took that role so seriously was so profound to me. He knew the gravity of what it meant to head a ship that has to traverse other worlds, and how do you keep your integrity intact when you're trying to deal with all these alien worlds while your value systems might differ, and who do you protect, and all of these moral conundrums and dilemmas and all of that. Like, I'm like, dude, this guy's got ice through his veins. He's
Right.
so
Right.
damn
Yeah.
good. He's
Yeah.
thinking and he's fighting and
Sure.
he's intellectually like fighting with all these ideas and so on. So all of that stuff, when I looked at it in the 90s, I was like, man, this guy's something. And I never put two and two together like, oh, this is how maybe there's an archetype in society. That's one thing I took away. But that archetype is there for a reason, because there people exist like that. People who are
Yeah.
true leaders, people of high integrity, who have moral centeredness and so on.
So look at that, right? Just as a comparison, right? When you say you're looking at these shows and they were integrated into, the culture at the time, right? Watching Captain Kirk, right, for you and you being able to see, like you just said, that was such a profound way of doing those things. But this is an American TV show, right?
Right, right.
And you got I'm a little bit familiar with it. Was it a Klingon that you had?
I've heard of that word. What
Spot
is that? Is that
what
the
like
weapon?
no, there is okay, so you had Captain Kirk, you had
That's
Spock,
Spock.
right,
Yeah.
right, so you had all of these different individuals,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
but they were a team,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
Captain Kirk was your leader, but there was a team that was there. So if you take that, right, and so that may have been something there. Yes, he was the face and he was the one, but it took all of them collectively
Indeed.
to be able to do what they needed to do to be able to get that mission out there. And so he always celebrated his team as well, right? He always celebrated the team and recognized them being there. So that
Right.
when you come to America now, those are some of the things that you're looking for. Is like, and that's what that embrace is, right? It's like you were coming into your kind of your frontier. This is not the final frontier for you, but you trekked, right? You took a Star Trek from India to America, and then now you've just been surrounded by a group of people, which is your team, right? And then you've just so been fortunate to have your Captain Kirks that's been all the way around you to help you be successful. So I think that that's a great parallel, that have gone through, man. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, on that very, very note, like, what is your mindset, Stephen, when you're getting ready to go to? Okay, I guess walk me through what your experience has been in Iraq. Like, what did you have to do before, during,
Sure.
and after?
Yeah, yeah. No, so of course, like you, right? I think that, in preparation, you're going to get briefings and you're going to get intel and you're going to get what to expect.
Yeah,
You're going to get what your missions and all of that stuff are. You're going to get your threat assessments. You're going to get all of those things, right? I think I remember one of the main things that I remember that really had my eyes open in this is when I got to Iraq. And sports, of course, they have sports and all of those things. And like we got the World Series and all of that stuff going on right now. And so whatever the home team there out in LA, right now, or even take Peoria, for example. We're in Peoria. The Peoria Chiefs win, and you got your fireworks and all of that stuff go off, right? In the game. So we know that, the Peoria Chiefs have won. So in Iraq, one of my first experiences, I think it was soccer. Of course, soccer is a major sport over there and they're winning. So me being a military celebratory fire, right? You hear weapons and you hear the guns and all of that stuff going off. Well, back at home, that's a threat. You hear guns going off, something is going on, right? Or some sort of danger, but that's a celebratory thing for them over there. So having to understand that, like, that fire is not being directed at us. Also, when you're in a mentality of like, okay, are we taking fire? You
Right.
get what I'm saying? And so having to immediately to be able to differentiate between what's celebratory or understanding like, okay, there's a game that's going on tonight and that's what that is. And this is the time frame. And so if you don't have all of that information and if you're not in that right type of mentality, complacency can set in, fear can set in, and you can make a big mistake in doing those things. So I vividly remember that as one of my first introductions to Iraq. Like, and then again, this is at night, when this is going on. So, you really got to be on your toes and understand that, okay, that this is just what that is. But also, like I say, not be complacent in those things because if you hear type of gunfire any other time, and okay, there's not a game that's going on, or is there a checkpoint that was under attack? Is that our guys that's out there? Right. So there's a lot of processing and a lot of understanding that you have to do in that in the very short moments to be able to make determinations. So your mental is much different for me overseas than it is just being at home. It takes a lot of mental fortitude, right?
Hmm.
And you have to be able to really like eliminate distractions, right? Like you have to be in the game. You have to be in the
All the
game
time.
all the time, all the time. Even when you're off, you have to be in the game. And so I spent quite some time over there. I spent about 7 months over there. So I'm around my guys the whole time, and then when you transition back into the States, it takes a little bit of reacclimation to kind of get back into because, you're such on edge because of just
Right.
how all the time you have to be on, your daily life, it seems as though it's normal. You feel as though you're being normal because you're around the individuals and all you all are doing the same work. And, you get your time where you get to work out or you get your time where you get to eat and things like that. And so you're able to have conversations. And it's not until again where you're taking out of one environment and placed back into another one. And you have to kind of just again recondition yourself. So I appreciated my time in Iraq, and I took the same mentality as far as like who I am, right? To treat the people the same way, right? And to interact with the culture because I think that it would be disrespectful of me to be there and not to be involved in the culture, right? And involved with the people, right? I want to be able to relay that, because it's all about dispelling misconceptions, right? And some of the Iraqis, of course, appreciated and loved us, our presence and all of that stuff there and knew the work that we were doing. It was for good. And so sometimes going over there and kind of having some news and intel and things like that. And you're like, okay, well, it's not maybe as bad as I thought, right? Or maybe as bad as I anticipated that this was going to be. And so there are people that they're just people just like us, right? And we maybe do some things differently, but at the end of the day, if we can share a smile or share a handshake or share some kind words with each other, they're like, okay, you know what I mean? Like we may have a disconnect as far as the language barrier, but the heart is connected.
How are you intellectually preparing yourself before active combat? Because at any point in time, things could turn on a dime, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
you could lose life or you could lose a limb or whatever. And that's a different mental space you're getting into. Can you walk me through what that meditation looks like?
Yeah, I think that for individuals and for us,
Yeah, you
like I say,
personally, I guess.
yeah, 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 yeah. You have to eliminate distractions, right? That's one of the
But
biggest
where do you
things I
get the
think.
courage? Where do you get the
Well,
courage? I'm
okay, yeah,
sorry.
that's great, right? Yeah, no, 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 absolutely. That's a great question. Getting the
Yeah.
courage is right. I think that it starts the day that you enlist, right? We can
Okay.
say that, we enlist for certain things, but the day that you enlist takes a tremendous amount of courage because this is a voluntary thing, right? Individuals voluntarily raise their right hand. So if you are taking that courage to raise your right hand to say that you're going to, serve admirably and honorably, that's the first step of courage, right? I think that the next step of courage is challenging yourself and completing basic training and completing um, you know, your skill set that you've completed. Each one of these things is going to build on our confidence, right? And so
Mm.
then we are able to answer our nation's call when it's time for that to happen. Should we be deployed? And so that just becomes with repetition, right? Training. That's what the military is really all about is to train to be able to be prepared for these situations because nobody gets hired at a job and then now they're saying, okay, go ahead and run this company. Yeah, no, I'm not going to know what to do. Right. But to be able to have these repetitions and to go over this, you have that continues to build on your courage and your confidence within yourself. And then so now when you have to apply that in a hazardous situation or in a combat situation, those are the things that you rely on. And it's the confidence that you've instilled within yourself. You trust your training and you rely on that. And you in the military with the team concept and going back to the Star Trek analogy is that we're trusting everybody around us, right? I have to trust the person to my left and to my right to know that they are responsible, and they are able to complete their job so we can all get through this together. So if we all have our responsibilities to be able to do, that is where the courage comes from, right? Is being able to know that, okay, I have to have my brothers back here. I have to have my sisters back there. And we're collectively having to complete this mission. So it takes a lot into it, and it just becomes through raising your right hand,
Repetition.
yeah, repetition and the training. So that's really where it comes from, relying that. And then of course, everything, everything is so detailed, understanding what you're going into and receiving the information that you receive to be able to do that. And that's where that comes from.
But you're also starting off with, sounds like to me, a baseline of courage, right? Like
Mhm.
you already have big enough balls to go to war, but
Right, right,
now
right.
then you're repping on that, increasing that. You're doing all these drills, you're doing all these exercises and so on, and building up and proving to yourself that you can show up every single
That's
time.
right. Every single time. That's right.
That is so cool. We talked about war when you and me met during that event at Distillery, and
Okay.
what the function of war could be going forward to humanity, And I'm guessing you've sort of, war meaning combat and killing and all of these things that
Hmm.
do unfortunately does happen in war. But uh, um, what where do you see this? I know this is a very deep philosophical question, but I'm curious, what do you think about it? Do you think there is such a utopia we can enter where we can put down all kinds of kinetic force over each other? No, kinetic force that we can wield on each other and instead of doing that, can we get along a little better? Do you think that's possible?
Do I think that it's possible? Of course, I don't want to even give you a BS answer or anything like that. I'm
Yeah,
from me, I think that all things are possible, right?
that's
I
fantastic.
think, yeah, I think that all things are possible, and you know, that's not even being, giving you the PC answer or anything like that.
Yeah.
I truly want to believe that. I know it's difficult and it could take time. Like you, sometimes I don't necessarily understand. What I'm saying, even wearing the uniform, I don't understand a lot of things. And I think that sometimes things have easy solutions. You know what I mean? But at the same time, too, I'm not privy to a lot of information all the time, right? Especially in the role that I am in. We have to understand that our responsibilities are certain levels and we have people above us. But I do believe, I truly believe that at the end of the day that we all want the same thing, right? We just have different ways of how we want to get there. You know what I mean? And so I think that that's what faith is, right? Whether it is biblical or religious or anything like that. I think we have a level of faith, right? And so if we all want those things and that is something that we want to strive and pursue, then we're gonna have our daily lives reflect that, right? And so that comes with, okay, if I can just, saying, impart this to this person and this person can then relate to pay it forward continuously, I think that that's how we achieve that, right? And so if you strive to live your life like that, whether it is a complete world utopia, for me, it's like if I've impacted one person's life and that next person can impact somebody else's life and they can attribute that to us, then I think that that's how that happens.
Do you see a lot of your fellow soldiers share some of your ideals?
You know what? Um, but I think that for people that get into the military, they get into the military for various reasons, whether it be, personal reasons, family traditions, or anything like that. But once they're in, there's a camaraderie that is there,
Mm,
right? And differences, I think, are set aside. And like you forget about that because
okay.
it's uh it's kind of expressed that like the mission is the goal, right? Like we just said, when it comes to repetition, when it comes to training, even when it comes to say you got a job as simple as, being able to provide food for all of these individuals, right? Everybody has a role and a mission to go to do, and they trust that mission. And so that mentality, I think, reverberates within the military.
Okay.
And so that's why, individuals can have differences, but we have something that is relatable and we understand what each other has gone through. Um, to where we're able to listen to each other. You get what I'm saying? And so that mentality within the military, and the armed forces, I think is something that is throughout all of the services. And I think that that's one thing that is beautiful about service. And so you have individuals that sometimes step away from the military where they serve their time and they miss it, right? They miss that camaraderie, they miss that
Mm,
that brotherhood that the military provides for them. So hopefully they're able to take that same mentality and impart that in other people. But it's sometimes difficult when you know, we don't, and that's when we open the conversations, like at least being willing to listen because, it's easy to talk to a military member because, like I said, we have a common ground of understanding, but everybody's experience may be different, and so we have to work extra hard when that translates on the civilian side.
So you're saying we could use a lot more of that camaraderie, that
The
brotherhood.
camaraderie, yeah, the brotherhood,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Understanding, yeah,
In
I don't
your
want.
life. Yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the craziest things to me, and I understand it. What I mean, I understand things, but also like some of the things that's crazy, and I know we have to do it, but it's like the wildest thing, and the thing that sometimes makes me very sad is it's like um you know, I have to lock my doors at night. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like when you think about that in a grand scheme of things,
yeah.
like the fact that I have to lock my doors to protect my family at night, it's sometimes sad, right? Because I should be able to go to sleep, or if I wake up and I realize that I left my garage door open, right? Then the first thing I'm doing is checking to make sure that everything is in place and intact, and
Hmm.
and that's sometimes that's very difficult for me to understand because I'm like, it shouldn't be like that. I should be
Yeah.
okay. You know what I mean? I should be okay and be able to sleep still just as peaceful knowing that my doors are locked and nobody's going to come in and try to take my life or harm my family or do anything from me. So I think that we have a lot of work to do, of course, in that. But I understand that it's just that not everybody's world is the same, and everybody's experience is different. But that's one part of me that when we talk about life is the sad part, that's the difficult part. And that's what keeps me realistic. And what I mean? Like I say, I like to be optimistic about some things, but I understand that, everybody's not perfect. But that's why you also, for me, I try to be kind to everybody, because everybody's experience is different. But
Hmm.
I appreciate people so much.
That is so profound. You've and have you always been a kind of a kind person to people?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Really?
absolutely. Yeah, I've always been that way. I value people. I can see the good, and that's what I'm saying. I think that comes from a foundation of faith and a foundation of
Mm,
of moral value
mm,
that was instilled with me. I understand that, you know what I mean? I'm not perfect. And so I can't expect perfection out of anybody else, right? But I want to hope that, your intent is pure. And even allow people to make mistakes. If people make mistakes, I may not understand it, but that's okay. You decided to that's the way you did it. And if I'm able to have a conversation and we can get a good understanding, and then we can go from there. And like I said, I think that that's how we attain that utopia. You know what I mean? For people, it's like people are raised differently. People are going to do things differently, and I want to have you know, you may do something and understand something completely different than I do, right? But if I understand why, or you can articulate, okay, this is the reason why. I'm like, okay, I can see why you did that, right? And so now if I can tell you, okay, well, this, and this, and you receive that, like, okay, and then that's how we take one step, right? And then now we're taking steps together to take multiple steps together, and then we'll reach that next person. You know what I mean? Again, it's just a it can be a reach, but that's usually how I try to live my life, man.
yeah. And I bet your experiences in life, not I bet, I have a feeling your life has been commensurately rewarding to you because you've lived this way. Life has also shown its kind side to you back again.
Absolutely, it has. I've gone through difficult challenges, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I'm not
It
gonna say
hasn't it
everything.
hasn't
Yeah,
broken you. It's so cool that
yeah,
it hasn't
yeah.
made you bitter or anything like that. And I love it. I love it, Stephen. I mean, it's like, it sounds like when I'm talking to you in real time, it sounds like something, you're saying these things as part of the conversation. But when I stop and think about it, you truly believe this kindness. You truly believe the goodness in people. These are the core of your values. These are the bedrock of how you kind of function in your life. This is just the basic operating system. I don't want to ever downplay that. I
Right.
feel like
Thank
you're
you.
kind of downplaying that, but I'm like, man, you truly meaning what you're saying. This is coming from your heart. This is truly what you believe. These are not platitudes that you're saying. This is how you've lived your
Right.
life. This is how you will, I'm guessing, will want to live your life. And I mean, it's for somebody who I've gone through wild swings, Stephen. Like
Sure.
like
Yeah.
I've not had any kind of, moral basis to some degree when I was growing up, and so I just did things and never had any kind of justification. Then when things happen, when you witness it, and then you realize, oh shit, I screwed up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
kind of bad. I'm guilty about that. And then, you try to remedy that and so on. And then went through this other phase and so on. But it seems like in your case, it's like a step function. It's just fairly straightforward. I love that. I want to amplify your voice for that very reason, among other reasons, is that you're operating from a fundamentally clean, ethical, morally centered position in life, and that's a very like, that is the front and center of who you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to make it come across as though like, it takes time, right? It takes time to do this and you become this way. And you have these thoughts process because of mistakes that you've made, right? And I'm not
Mm.
saying you, I'm saying us
Yeah,
as
yeah,
individuals, right? I've made my fair share of mistakes, right?
yeah.
And yeah, and I've
Do you
come across
reflect
some
a
very,
lot when you do that
oh,
sort of thing?
percent. It's important. You have to. I think reflection and self-evaluation is of utmost importance when it comes to the growth, right?
Mm.
And you know what? The other thing that's very important is, being able to forgive yourself, right?
Mm.
That is, I think that once you are able to truly understand what forgiveness is and being able to forgive yourself for some things that like, okay, like at the core, we know who we are, right? And we may present a certain type of way, but we know that that may not be who we are for real. Right. And so that's why, sometimes we may know individuals and let me speak for myself, right? You could present a certain type of way and then, you could be just exhausted, right? Because you're playing a character,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just like, and then so it's just like now when you have to get in front of people or when you have to go show up for something, now you have to put this mask on or you have to
Right.
put this costume on and you weren't ready to put that costume on and that's not truly who you are. And so then when you make those shortfalls or when you make these mistakes, it's not in the true entity of or embodiment of who you really are. So
Hmm.
now you're trying to cover up that and that takes work and that's hard and that's a lot, and then so it can get to a point and we see that, right? And so we see that it can be very detrimental to some people, right? Some
Hmm.
people can hit rock bottom. And then if people hit rock bottom, then at the time now they don't know how to deal with anything. And then sometimes that's how unfortunate things happen. Right.
Yeah.
But if and when we are going to hit rock bottom at some point, we're all going to
Right.
hit rock bottom
Right.
at some point. But once we do that, being able to forgive yourself for sure, like being able to like look at yourself, we hear these cliches like you have to be happy and look at the man in the mirror, right? And
Hmm.
and sometimes we see that and we look at that and we hear that and I can look at myself and I can feel good about myself, right? But when you really take a look at yourself, and I got to a point to where it's like I couldn't look at myself. Like I just did not like who I was. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like, this is not me. This is not at the core who I am or what I believe. And then when that is exposed to yourself, because you can't play nobody else, that's when that reflection happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, well, who is it that you want to be? Who are you trying to be? Who is it that you say that you are?
Who are
Right?
you to
Who
begin with?
are you? Right? Yeah. Who are you? Like that. Who are you? And when you really take that serious and say, like, who are you? Now you can kind of start seeing yourself in a little bit more clarity. Right.
Yeah.
And then once you get there, being able to forgive yourself and allow yourself to say, like, I've made some mistakes and I'm not gonna let that define me. And this is a part of who I was, but this is not who I'm striving to be. And sometimes it's you come across people that you have your cynics that are like people don't change unless something makes them change, right? And then just having to maybe again, just continue to do the work. Like this is who I am, and I get it and I understand, right? Because everybody's experience is completely different. But if you are once you are able to really truly get to a place to where the mistakes that you made, right, you can move forward from that. You can forgive yourself from a small mistake to a big mistake and trust that you're going to do it differently the next time you face this challenge, right? Because life is going to continue to life. It's not going to stop. And when you face this challenge again and you can overcome that, like we talked about with military training, repetition, the more you repetition and you have these things and you say, okay, I face this challenge, it's not as difficult the next time that I face this. And I know exactly who to do this or how to get through this, or I know who to call now to be able to help me out through these things. And so I believe that it really takes a collective. And you said it, like that's where that utopia comes from, being able to have these people surrounded by these people in your lives to say, like, hey, I'm going through some challenging right now. Right. To have the vulnerability to be able to say that and to be able to call on somebody, a close friend or something, somebody, or even if it's just you to be able to know, like you say, we make that we've trusted ourselves to be able to get through it just to get to the little bit, So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
far from perfect, far from perfect, far from perfect.
I must say, forgiving yourself is such, to me, such an underrated like sentiment in society. I don't think we encourage people to do that to yourself, to keep forgiving
Right,
yourself
right.
and to give yourself a break. And this is something that, just to give you an example, my wife one time said to me, I wouldn't treat you how you treat yourself. And it just really hit me in the gut. It's like, oh my God, she's noticing
Right.
something, how I'm treating myself. And
Yeah.
but that was the
Mm,
way I was raised. It's just that you have to be
yeah. Yeah.
so hard on yourself because that's the only way you're going to grow. Not really. You can love
No.
yourself. Forgive yourself and also work hard. It's all like mutual.
And
It's
also,
not,
that's right.
yeah, exactly. And you can
Yeah.
excel. And like you said, keep repping and repping and repping. Keep doing better. You'll realize your sweet spot and hold
Yeah.
on to that.
Yeah. And I'm sure that was like a breath of fresh air when your wife said that to you. You was like,
It
it
stopped
was,
me in my tracks.
yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's like clarity, like, wow, like, man, like, okay.
This is
Yeah.
really
So that's,
visible.
yes, absolutely.
How mean I am to myself, mean spirited perhaps or whatever. She's like
Right.
noticing it. Shit.
Right. No, that's incredible. That's incredible. And big ups for you to be able to hear that, right? To be able to
Yeah.
hear that and again, not, you know what I mean? Take that as like, she said the fact that it stops you in your tracks is really good. And you're like, all right, you might be onto something. You might be onto something. Yeah, that's good. Good for her. Big ups for her. So
I do
yeah.
bring it up and I thank her for that. But Stephen, it's been a pleasure. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
man, what a conversation. You fill my cup. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thank you for being who you are. And please keep doing what you're doing. And I'd love to keep following your work and so on.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and if you're up for it, maybe we'll have another podcast in the future, talk about other things going on and so on.
Anytime. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure, you know what I mean, meeting you and having conversations with you. I'm excited for everything that you're doing and
Yeah,
just
thank you.
growing your page and growing your mind, right? And doing the self reflection and all of those things that you're doing. So I appreciate you so much for even taking the
Likewise.
consideration and the time to have me. So thank you so much.
Likewise. Have a good evening.
Hey, you do the same. Take care, my friend.
Cheers.
I was born like this, like this. I was born like this.